So here we are with Nicole, the head of startups at CoVentured, and we're here to learn about her amazing journey from New Zealand, doing startup there, coming to Sydney, and the extraordinary work at CoVentured that you guys are doing, supporting the ecosystem in Australia. So do you just want to give us an overview, Nicole, of what you did? Like, how did you start off in the startup world? What was your calling? And take it from there.
Yeah, sure. So after I graduated from university, I always wanted to learn more about the tech industry, but having studied law and I had a law degree, I didn't quite know how to venture into the tech world.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing a job at a tech company to be a consultant, and I applied and I got the job, and I did that for 10 months and absolutely loved it. And while I was there, I met two other awesome guys who were into the startup scene and also new technologies and all of that type of stuff. And we ended up going to a startup weekend. We came up with this idea, pitched it, and off the back of that, we actually got accepted into an accelerator program in New Zealand.
Fantastic.
So
it's literally that weekend that you didn't come in there with a preconceived idea.
No,
and
nothing.
It was just creativity on the spot.
Yeah.
So what was the idea?
So we identified a problem, and originally it was in the hospitality industry, and that was, the businesses felt quite overwhelmed when they were getting employment documentation together to have a new worker start. So we came up with this, we started exploring more into that problem area, and through the accelerator program we actually discovered that there was a real problem in New Zealand among contract workers in vineyards and orchards, because they would go from 20 to 200 staff within like a week. And often for small to medium sized vineyards and orchards they find that quite overwhelming. So that's
paperwork involved and
exactly. So that's when we came up with the idea for Cohelix, which was a HR tech platform for vineyards and orchards to manage seasonal employment paperwork.
Awesome.
So we built that platform, we launched it in New Zealand.
By the way, I love that you can compress in your elevator pitch thing, I can tell that would have taken a lot of work.
Oh gosh, definitely. Like for ages, I'd be like, oh yeah, so it's kind of like this thing. And there's a really big problem, and it definitely took a long time to be able to articulate. But I think that's the best thing about being in a startup community is that you're around really awesome mentors and people who've been there, done that, and also other startups who can really help you refine the way you say it.
Otherwise, people are just left with technology and HR. And you don't really get anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure you get that as well. When you talk to different startups, it's I can see kind of the area that you're playing in, but it's often, if you're not an expert in that area, it's often quite difficult to understand what that startup does. So to be able to break it down into a really basic formula, even though you're so deep in everything that's involved, to be able to take a step back and to be able to articulate it.
And it's sort of funny because I think we think that it's about those words or something, but it's not. If you meet someone and they do that, you can tell that they've done all the work, and it's a testament to how much work they're willing to put in. So I already know that you sat there with your co-founders going, how should we do this?
Yeah, and I remember a really good formula that we learned, and actually it's something that we will now I share with lots of different startups when they're using CoVentured to pitch to corporates, is 4X we do, so the customer, and then the problem, and then the solution. So for example with Cohelix, it was for vineyards and orchards with seasonal workers. We help them solve that problem of onboarding by giving them a platform that makes it easier. So it's kind of what's the problem?
X, Y, Z.
Your customer, your problem, and your solution, and being able to put that into one sentence was a really good formula.
And we'll go into it later, but it just opens way more doors, and it also shortens the time, etc. Awesome. Let's come back. So you were in that, and then how did it sort of grow from the accelerator?
So we, at the back of the accelerator, we started selling the product. So we had 7 customers using it in New Zealand. In the Marlborough region where there's lots of wine, and then up north where there's lots of apples. And then we decided, we may as well start exploring further markets, because we always had this idea that we would grow into Australia, because obviously there's a lot of fruit picking and harvesting here. So we actually ended up getting accepted into another accelerator program here in Australia, which was so beneficial for us, because coming from New Zealand to Australia, we didn't have any networks or any connections. And I think without the backing of a community, it would have been really difficult for us to understand how to come to Australia and connect with people. So that was like the most valuable thing for us.
Awesome.
So we came here.
Sorry, just to go back a bit, if I can ask that first 7, because it sounds like those first 7 customers would have been vital for you guys to explore what you're doing.
Definitely.
How did they come about? Were they networks, and how did you make that first?
Basically, we just jumped in a car and drove around New Zealand and door knocked on all of it. We just found ourselves in the most random places in the outback of New Zealand. And most of those customers we actually sold to without even having a product. So it's the whole idea of validation and wireframing, prototyping. Through that process, we were able to refine what a product could look like, and then we went away and built it, and you put it into their hands.
So you went there with what did you have in your hands when you jumped in the car and then you were driving along the streets? Did you have just sort of a pitch deck, or going, this is how we're going to present it? Did you have wireframes?
Yeah, so we had wireframes, and I think the biggest thing was just listening. Which I think is the best thing you can do is listen to customers, and everyone always says that.
So simple, but it's not.
Because it's so easy when you're so excited about something to just share that
this
idea.
Is going to work, or you're trying to get confident about it, versus no, do they get that this is a real problem for them?
Exactly. So it's all about understanding what they do and what their problems are, because there's no point in trying to pitch them an idea if they don't actually have that problem. So it was all about listening to them and being like, okay, so these are your problems, and then we're like, okay, so you've got problems with X, Y, Z. We've actually got a solution that can help you with X, Y, Z. And so it's about marrying those two up.
Fantastic. So they then from there they decided, yes, this is a real problem I'm facing. And then what did they commit to working with you guys, and you kept bringing them things? And
so it was basically because they were our early adopters, we gave them a special rate. They understood that part of this special rate and relationship was that they would give us feedback. So that was
beautiful.
Interesting.
And then so you did that, and then how long did that go for in that period before you were?
So I think we were in New Zealand for from launching a product, 6 months in New Zealand. We refined it a little bit and then decided to test the market in Australia. So came over here, kind of did the same thing. So we spent, even though we were based in Sydney, we spent most of our time in Adelaide, because that's where a lot of the vineyards were.
Absolutely.
Especially the big ones. So we went over there, and basically we learned that in Australia the problem wasn't the same as in New Zealand. So in New Zealand the problem was doing the documentation, but over in Australia the bigger problem was actually finding contract workers. And so we started to realise that actually there's not a need for our product in this market here. We need to change something. And this is kind of I think what happens to a lot of startups is what ended up happening was we ran out of capital. We really had burnt ourselves out as founders, and
just the distance of travelling.
And our team was all over the show, and there was just 3 of us, and it was a really hard decision to come to be like, okay, I think we've actually invalidated the growth of the current product, so we actually need to change our product to be able to service a market and build a business that's scalable. I guess we were kind of faced with an ultimatum. It's like, do we raise more capital and continue to build it out, or do we say, okay, this was a good journey, maybe it's time for us to do something else? And we decided with the latter. But I doing that for nearly 2 years was probably one of the best things. And it's basically helped me kind of through the networking and connections that I made through the startup ecosystem. I was able to join Co-Ventured, where I work now. So and it taught me a lot of skills that I've actually been able to bring to CoVenture.
And skills that you just can't get anywhere, right?
Yeah, I feel like when you're running a business, you just learn so much. Like, I feel like I learned more doing the startup than I did at university for 5 years.
Absolutely. I say the same thing too.
Yeah.
And if we zoom into that, because I think there's something about driving around to places. I was in cold calling back in my uni days,
right.
And so I completely, know that to be on a call every 5 minutes and you sort of gotta learn to adapt and just deal with it.
Yeah.
And I think that even with CoVenture, it's like we are bringing things to make it easier for people, but a lot of entrepreneurs therefore miss these really important things, which are to just go out and speak to people. And so for you, what was some of the biggest things you got, like being on the road, driving around, sort of getting your hands dirty?
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, like meeting. There's nothing like meeting the end user and seeing actually how they work in their day-to-day, being able to understand, like, because it's not only a solution that you're providing to them, but it's like all these other factors as well which play into their reality.
Yes.
And then you can better understand how the product fits into their day-to-day.
It could even be a pain point, but it's not a pain point enough that they actually don't really care.
Yeah.
So technically it's a validation, but it's not the most important thing.
Exactly. Yeah. And there's nothing like a face-to-face conversation as well.
Yeah.
I feel like you learn so much from people's body language, and like the way they're talking, and their facial expressions. You can learn so much about that.
Yeah, you can see that they're saying yes, but then they're not actually smiling when they say it. So it was really good to hear about, you and your story on the ground, visiting these vineyards and everything, because I think especially entrepreneurs starting out, they're reading the books, they're doing all this research online, and it becomes very intellectualized. And in the end of the day, entrepreneurship is about getting out there and doing the thing. And like I've even noticed some people trying to go to investors and doing all of this grand stuff without the basic building blocks.
Yeah.
So it's really good to hear that. So you made that hard decision, which I know is a very difficult decision to make. I've had some very similar ones in the past. Did that leave a door? Was it a blank slate for you before you moved into CoVenture, or did that sort of happen in the background?
Yeah, it was kind of, I was just looking for my next thing, and I knew that I loved working in the startup community and through all of my experience, and then learn about CoVenture, and it's a fairly new organisation, but they're looking to grow the organisation, and so because it's a two-sided platform, they really needed someone to focus on the startup side, and having experience being in a startup myself, but also while we were in that startup Cohelix, we created a partnership with the New Zealand government. So I had some experience of what it's actually like as a startup, dealing with a big dog organisation, and the processes and the negotiation and all of that happens when you're trying to close a big partnership with with an organisation.
And tell me about that, because I think, and we were just saying that in the last couple of years, the landscape has totally changed. And we've experienced this too with certain corporates we work with, and they know that they're on limited sort of time scales, and things are changing so rapidly. So what are some of the top challenges that they are facing in their landscape? Well,
like, innovation has always been a key priority for corporates, because if they don't keep disrupting themselves, then they're going to become irrelevant. And so traditionally, corporate innovation happened internally, so there were a lot of
departments.
Exactly, departments and nurturing creative teams within organisations, and that still works and that still needs to happen. But what corporates are seeing now is that there are so many things happening in the world that are moving really fast now, and so for that corporate to keep up to speed with what's happening in the world, they actually need to look at ways that they can work with external innovation. So that's where we see like this corporate startup innovation and partnerships starting to arise and come about is because corporates actually want to get a foothold and an understanding and start to do more further R&D into all of these awesome emerging technologies, new industries.
And it's just going to cost them so much to try to do it all in-house, and
Exactly, So lots of corporates are now looking at ways, and you see that through lots of different accelerator programs or corporates sponsoring lots of cool startup events. And so CoVentured is just one of those platforms that helps the corporate have an understanding and a place where they can actually connect with the startup community through the platform.
And then on the other side of the picture, what are the challenges that you see startups face when they start even thinking about working with corporates or government?
So that's the big thing, and that's why. So we are. I guess I should explain what CoVentured is so people can understand. So we're a platform that connects startups and corporates to accelerate innovation and growth. So like I said before, the problem for the corporates is that they want to be able to innovate externally, but they're not too sure how to make those connections with the startup community. And then on the other side of the platform, which is why we started, was because as a startup, it's really difficult to know which corporates are open to conversation, who the best person is to talk in the corporate, and what's the best way to contact them. And so that's when the idea for CoVentured came about. So we make it a lot easier for startups to actually reduce the effort to connect with a corporate by helping them understand who the corporates are that they should, or the low-hanging fruits in terms of corporates that they can connect with right now. But we also provide them on the CoVentured platform a snapshot of the corporate, because it can often be difficult when you're Googling to actually understand what the corporate does, and as a startup, why should you be starting a conversation with them?
Absolutely.
So by having
so many areas and little pockets, and it's
exactly.
Wow.
So by looking at the CoVentured corporate profile as a startup, you're able to see, this corporate is interested in these key areas and improving, or they've got strategies in place around this. This is the right person to contact, and I can actually contact them on the platform. So as a startup, you can actually do your research on CoVentured, understand a little bit more about the corporate, and decide whether or not they're a good corporate to reach out to and start a conversation.
How are they thinking about things, and what are they looking for? Because it shows that they're already motivated to be on the platform, but then it gives you even more information about that.
Exactly. And because it is really what our startups are saying as well is that like what we were talking about before, it's really important to understand your customer. And I think prior to CoVentured, it's actually really difficult for a startup to understand the customer, because it's a corporate, it's a massive beast. So by being able to understand the corporate, understand where they're coming from, understand the challenges that the corporate are facing, you can come from a better place as a startup. And something we always say as well, when you message a corporate on our platform, it's not about you, it's not about your startup, it's about them.
Tell us about the challenges startups face when they start thinking about working with a corporate, or they just start engaging with them. What have you been experiencing they face, and how do they overcome that?
Yeah, sure. So as I mentioned before, one of the biggest challenges is actually understanding what the corporate is and what they actually do. So being able to understand what that corporate's problems and challenges are as a startup, that can be quite difficult, because it's not something you find on Google. You can't really Google, what challenges is this corporate having today, So we provide a space for them to be able to do some of that research on the corporate, and then be able to connect with them. So I guess some of the challenges that the startups are facing is knowing which corporates to connect with and which ones maybe are kind of later on down the track. Because as you know, as a startup, your runway is quite short, and you need to be able to do things now efficiently. So CoVentured kind of helps them make those connections more efficiently.
And that's the thing I love about CoVentured is that you guys have distilled all the right people to contact, so you don't have to go to the gatekeeper who gets passed on to this person and then you just go around in a loop. You're going straight to the person, and you said you actually speak to the corporates and work out. Is that right?
Exactly.
The person to talk to?
Yeah, exactly. And so that's the key benefit of being a startup and using CoVentured, is that we've actually done all the hard work for you. We've done the due diligence on the corporate, and we've found that key person in the organisation who has the budget and the authority to deal with your startup.
Yeah.
So that when you're making a connection on the CoVentured platform, it's actually going to be seen by someone who has the budget and authority to deal with the startup and not just pass you from one person to the next.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think what's really good is that they, well actually we were saying about how in the end of the day it's another human being on the other line, and that's how, if you're a startup, you shouldn't be thinking this is a big corporate, how am I going to understand them? You just start learning what that other person needs and what's going on in their world. Is that what you've been finding?
Exactly, yeah. So corporations are beasts, and there's so many different people with so many different job titles in the organisation. So being able to, when you have that first conversation with the person in the corporate, humanising it and remembering that they're actually one person in the organisation who has their KPIs and their goals.
Yeah.
So learning what they do and what their challenges are and what drives them in their role is really important, because if your startup can solve some of those problems for that person,
they're going to be a champion.
They'll be a champion. Your startup will make their role easier, you'll make them look great, they'll be a champion within the corporate, and they'll actually eventually help you navigate the corporate as well, like once you start forming that partnership. So it's so important to, like, when you first, what we always tell our startups is when you first have a meeting with a corporate, it's almost like dating them. You can't really like propose to them on the first date and be like, hey, let's have a partnership. It's like, well, we've just met, I don't know anything about you. It's like, well, actually use the first date with the corporate as a way to get to know them, really understand what drives them, what drives that person, and then you can actually create a foundation which will grow, a meaningful relationship can grow from, rather than one where you just don't quite understand each other.
Most definitely. Excellent, Nicole. Thank you so much. And so just for the startups out there who want to start getting involved with corporates, where should they go? What should they do? Yeah,
so it's free as a startup to have a profile on CoVentured, and it's always free. We just provide a space for that startup to be on the platform and start connecting with corporates. We don't take any cut in any relationship. We're just there to help your startup, because and we know how hard it is as a startup to connect with corporates. So as a startup, jump onto CoVentured.
So just CoVentured.com, and they can set up a profile for free. And then once they go in there, what do they see and how do they start connecting with the corporates?
So when you're on the CoVentured platform, you create your startup profile, and we've actually listened to our corporates and distilled all of the key information that corporates want to know about a startup. So that's how the startup profile is structured.
So even without talking to anyone, they can see the different profiles, and then they have the contact details, is that right?
So on the platform there's two key ways that startups connect with corporates. The first way is you can direct message the corporate on the platform, and the second way is corporates actually put out programs, which is like a specific project that they want to work with startups on. So a corporate might be like, hey, we're looking for startups to help us with XYZ, apply now. So that's another way that startups can actually really pinpoint how they can help corporates. So those are the two key ways: direct messaging and also applying for programs.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for coming in, Nicole. Guys, go and head out to CoVentured.com. Work out how you can impact the corporate community and get your startup out there that way. And you might be creating a relationship that really game changes the startup you're creating. And that's exactly why these guys do what they do, is to support that community. So thank you once again, and we'll see you all next time.